Out of the expansion and contraction within matter, when the density becomes too great, a tension is created. That tension is known as Bala. It is a type of energy that is created from this tension. Out of that forms life. Those small elements of life are called microvita. From this microvita, is formed prana, the food of life. Generated by life, the life cycle, and consumed in mental activity. When tamas becomes too great and matter too dense, sattva emerges, so that the material manifestation has both tamas, a material form, and sattva. Sattva expresses as mental form, because it is less bound. This mental form is fed by prana. Prana emerges when the life cycle begins. Prana is generated from life and feeds mind. So food, physical food, feeds the body, and it feeds the different organs until finally it feeds the life production organs. And then when it has fed the entire physical form, it turns the remaining force of that energy becomes the food of the mind. And physical energy is transmuted into subtle energy. That subtle energy is a pranic force. It feeds mental development. So the body produces a substance known as ojas, which is the transmutation of physical vitality, which feeds the physical body, which is governed by tamas, and then transmutes to subtle energy, which feeds the mind, governed by sattva. That mental energy is prana. Produced by the body as ojas. Prana allows for the psychic interface of mind and brain. As the life form develops more and more, these systems become more complex. All manner of organs develop to process food and perform various other functions. That help to integrate mind and body into the capacity to act in this sphere, this loka, this sphere of reality. In this way, matter becomes freed from its bondages of ever condensing to feed subtle energies and mind. So the mind feeds on matter. The matter takes in energy, whether it is food or in other forms, transmutes it to feed the mind. And thus, the stress of the densification process of the 5 fundamental forces or elements is relieved. That densification of consciousness into matter has reached its apex in the condensation in the earth element. Matter has formed, but that matter cannot continue on this road of densifying without the nature of consciousness requiring expansion. Thus, matter and expansiveness for mind. Individual unique minds associated with matter. And awareness, consciousness, intelligent attention becomes absorbed in the life process experience, and a unique individual is born into existence who through countless lifetimes of transformation of matter forms a more and more complex mental structure until that complexity of mental structure becomes a mirror of its cosmic progenitor, the cosmic mind, in which all of this dance of creation has taken place. So, like the moon reflected in 1,000 rain puddles in a heavy storm, so the cosmic mind is reflected in these unique individual expressions that have developed in association with matter. And they become the unique flowers in the garden of life, the expressions of creation's capacity, the delightful children of the cosmic progenitor. Each unique, holding great potential. They begin to resemble in their mental bodies more and more their cosmic progenitor. And if the process goes on and on, they become like that cosmic progenitor until, having no difference, mind re-merges with its source, and consciousness is freed from association with matter. So this is the cycle of creation and dissolution known as Brahma Chakra, the circle of creation. Does it make sense to you? Do you have any?
Yes, I think you filled in something. One small bit is that you say when the prana is generated, the small particles of it, the small bits of it are microvitas. Is that psychic microvita?
No, this is not what I have said. Prana has no particle.
All right.
Life has association with matter. Prana is merely a subtle energy produced by life.
Uh-huh.
It has no material form. It is generated out of material form by transmuting the vital force in the material form into prana. That is what the demonstration of food goes in, goes through a transmutation. The energy of the food is dissected, taken out of the food, and transmuted into physical energy, which feeds the various organs, and finally to ojas, which becomes prana, which feeds the mind. You see?
Yes.
So basically, Baba, you say life creates prana. I thought prana creates life.
There is a subtle distinction.
Then what is life?
I have just explained when when there is an excess of tamas and the binding is too tight on consciousness, on beingness, there emerges the element of sattva to surround the physical form, and so the condensation process is thwarted because the energy can no longer go into this densification. It is no longer going into the elements. It is circumvented into the development of mind. So it is life force which emerges from this densification. That life is micro vita. It is the life.
How Bala plays here a role?
Bala is so consciousness has a natural expansive nature. It is subtle. When it begins to be contained, at first it is contained by sattva. Then as it continues to densify, it gets contained in rajas. Rajas produces raw energy. Then as it continues to become more dense, it is contained in a tighter, more inert form in matter. As that process of densification continues, the matter becomes too dense, and the expansive nature of the universe, the expansive nature of consciousness cannot sustain this excessive pressure. So you have the natural expansiveness of being, of consciousness, desiring freedom from form. And you have this process of the elements making ever tighter constriction of consciousness, until in matter consciousness is quite inert. It is not awake to its own nature. It is dense. That is why if you split an atom, huge amounts of energy will come from a single atom. So much consciousness has been formed into density, even in energy, and when that energy is condensed into matter, so much energy is condensed to form a single atom, that if you break apart that atom and it reverts to its energy, it is a huge amount of energy. You see? That is the nature of this condensation. And these two forces, the force of expansion and the force of condensation, create a tension. And as the condensation becomes too tight, that tension cannot be tolerated. And so sattva emerges. And the energy which is trying to be tighter and tighter, caught in the 5 fundamental factors and in this condensation process, now becomes moved into the development of mind. And this is why it is confusing between prana and life, because that density of energy which is flowing into matter, when it changes direction and forms life, That is prana. You see?
So before prana, we have bala, which is just pure kind of energy. Is that...
But bala forms life. So you cannot say that prana is there before life. It is when there is life that prana is the energy becomes prana rather than the condensing of tamas. You see? It's a noisy place today.
We have such ideas.
So does that make sense? Does it answer your question?
Much more. I think it gives me something to contemplate a little further. Perhaps another time we can talk about, add to this discussion, the chittanu, the release of the subtle chitta particles.
And I have just a question in terms of bala, can bala be the force of free energy? Because now there's this whole movement how to get the free energy. I mean, it's not free, but how to harness the forces of the universe instead of getting the physical energies from trees and fuels and stuff like that.
Imagine that there is a flow of water. Imagine this. Mm-hmm. There is a flow of water, and that flow is narrowed into a stream. Then it is narrowed into a duct, and the water is going round this duct, and the duct is becoming tighter and tighter and smaller, till pretty soon the water is squished in the duct. And then, seeing that there is no way to continue in this duct, the water begins to overflow out of the duct into something else. It begins to splash off. That water that is being condensed, that is a flow of energy. The energy is material as long as it is controlled by tamas. And as the control of tamas gets tighter and tighter, it becomes thicker and thicker until it cannot continue. Then it must break free. And as it breaks free, that forms this life force, this life. And the life is composed of the same energy. But it is a different container than the tamas container. It is a sattva container. So the flow gets channeled into a different duct, a different container, which is open-ended and expansive. And as it expands, mind grows, and mind grows in magnitude. Do you see?
Yeah.
So it is not water, it is only for the analogy.
Uh-huh.
All right, are there any further questions? I can't hear.
Another time.
Maybe my question can be taken some other time.
All right. This is a very subtle question that has been asked, and many people have confusion because they confuse the flow of energy that gets shifted from the containers which contain the energy. One container dominated by tamas, matter. The other container dominated by sattva, life. You see? The energy that flows is the same energy, but it has a different quality when it's dominated by sattva and is poured into life. It becomes prana. The energy is not even energy. That is the wrong word, really speaking. It is the movement of consciousness. All is made of one substance, one cosmic mind. And even the substance of cosmic mind is consciousness, is being. This self-aware beingness is formed into the 5 fundamental factors, and thus into all of the natural world. And until in matter it becomes so self-forgetful, it is so dense and self-forgetful, it cannot stay in such a state. So a new container emerges in association with the elemental matter. And that container is life. Microvita, the smallest particles of life, the smallest aspects of life. And these consciousness flows into that. And becomes that. It becomes the container. And the force that moves the container through the evolution. So many people wonder about death, life and death. If there is life, what is death? When the physical container with which the mental and subtle sattva dominated, more aware covering is associated, begins to the sattva guna becomes like a layer upon the tamas, upon the matter. The consciousness dominated by matter, consciousness dominated by mind. And they move together. But matter has a deteriorating lifespan. It is dominated by time. Time and space move matter. Time and space do not move mind in the same way they move matter, because mind is dominated by sattva, matter by tamas. So matter deteriorates with time and changes form. Mind, then freed from matter, does not deteriorate in the same way, because it is dominated by a different element, and time and space affect it differently. Matter tends to deteriorate and to transmute. Mind sustains and then is attracted again to matter, and then forms life in that matter. So mind experiences life when in association with matter, and the dissolution of life, but the sustaining of being. And as mind grows in magnitude, it sustains a uniqueness. All of the experiences and reactions to experience, the basket of karma, sustains, becoming the unique individual expression that has evolved in life after life, and is then drawn to a material form which can express it fully. And so this mental existence within the cosmic mind, this unique individual, formed out of all of the multitude of experiences that they have had, forming a unique individuality, is drawn again and again to find expression in life. Each time growing more substantial until the expressions begin to mirror the cosmic expression. And when that happens, a dissolution occurs. The individual mind expands. It can happen to a single individual or an entire planet of beings merge together and merge into cosmic mind, absorbing all the knowledge of the universe, becoming one with that cosmic progenitor. So one may ask a very esoteric question. Did the cosmic mind come into existence and thus form creation? Or did the creation evolve and form the cosmic mind? I will leave you with that one. All right? Namaskar.
I never thought about that question, but now I will think about it.